From the sands of the Colosseum podcasting arena, where thumbs are always up for the cinematic, I am Petus Correctus, and I welcome you to another bloody episode of the Film Senate. Today we face the might of Rome's newest epic, Gladiator II, but fear not, for by my side stand three senators of wit, ready to dissect the spectacle and spill the critical wine. First, a veteran of 1,000 podcast battles, Stevus Sarmentus.
Wood, steel, a point's a point.
Then, the master of the rhetorical blade, sharper than a Spaniard's gladius, Justus Jaegus.
I made it. It was hard. And I was a broken path. But I'm here to slay them all.
And finally, the legionary of laughter, whose jokes are as swift and deadly as a scorpion's sting, Thomas Metius the Triumphant.
Grain. Just grain.
Together we shall face the rhinos of filmmaking together and watch them hit the wall hard. Let the games begin.
All right.
Did you feel the worst for the rhino? Was that the low point at the movie?
100%. 100%.
That was the worst
terrible.
part.
Yeah.
What did they do to that rhino? It's just the CG rhino, and I still felt more emotion toward it than anyone else in this movie. I'm sorry. Hi, guys. I'm Pete, and I'm here, and we're here to talk about Gladiator II. And we picked this movie because Tom told us we had to, and it was JJ's fault? JJ told us we had to.
I did not. Tom advocated vehemently my position that was tenuous at best.
Right.
All I remember is somebody felt strongly about it, and I feel vindicated. Where do we let's do some initial thoughts on Gladiator. We should set this down. I'm going to let JJ go first because I think his story is the most interesting.
How much clarity and transparency should I bring to these initial thoughts now?
I think you should bring
Strong.
all the transparency.
So I went to see the movie today, and so many comedy of errors happened on my way to this film. When I say I made it, I rushed here because I got the time that we're recording wrong. I saw all of the showings and I saw the runtime. I got the runtime wrong. I got everything wrong. But the real sort of blessing in all this is that the hour that I was able to consume of this movie before I realized I was late to meet you jokers was enough to let me know that this movie is just plain wrong in all the ways, grain included. So I'm really excited to talk about it in terms of why. So let's hear it.
All right, Steve.
So it's a epic tale, and I saw it in IMAX on a huge screen. So huge rhino tears for me on that. Everything was big and bad in this movie in so many ways, and I have so many issues with this film and some of the assumptions that are made, because I just watched Gladiator. I rewatched it last week. It had been a long time, so I just really wanted to get into this, like really familiar with the story. Where are we? What we're following up on this. What's going on? And realized I shouldn't have done that because it just made me more angry with this one, because it's just, let's staple this thing onto this other thing. It's no, it was not pleasant. And the more I think about it, the worse it gets, the more pain I experience.
Oh, I'm sorry to put you through this next hour. Tom.
I purposefully, for that reason, didn't rewatch Gladiator. I wanted to let this, and because from the one trailer I saw, I knew that he was going to go nuts. Ridley Scott, because there was already too many things in the trailer that were too big and too weird. And was that a shark? And so I wanted it to stand on its own. I don't think this movie is good, but I'm glad I went to see it. I liked it. I don't think, if you divorce it from being a gladiator movie and take it away from like the importance and how well the first one ended up doing, and just have it be this other movie, it's a bunch of junky fun, and it's always interesting, and I love that Denzel Washington is in a completely different movie. And the biggest fight throughout the movie is Denzel Washington fighting his own scarves. Like that's so no, I kind of dug this movie, but it's not good. Like I spent parts really laughing, I spent parts really rolling my eyes, but I wasn't ever bored.
I actually, I mean, to that point, I don't think I ever measured my experience of boredom in the movie. I don't think I was bored either. There's a lot going on, and I think the movie suffers a few sins. One is for me, there's no heart in our principal character. The story I cared about most was not the story they needed me to care about most.
Right.
And that's a shame because I do like Paul Mescal, and I think his is an interesting angle, but mostly I just could not wait for the emperors to meet their end. Like I needed them to die the moment I met them, and that I was really interested in the mechanics of Denzel and the Senate and all of that, and I wanted that to be more robust. And at the cost of this other story that I don't think they, the story of legacy and identity that they just did not make strong enough, the movie deflates, right? It just deflates under its own CG weight. And I'll say that let me just say this about that.
Okay.
The
Foghorn
CG,
Leghorn.
the CG doesn't look good. But what I like about it is that they attempted to show us parts of Roman history and like Colosseum errata that I've heard tell they did, right? I have heard they fill up that place with water and put ships in it, and that's crazy to me. And I've never seen a movie try it. I've never seen a movie try and make it believable. This movie didn't make it believable, but did try it, and that's cool.
Mhm.
Like that was cool. There were cartoon sharks in the water.
Yes.
I wish they had been like straight up animated and like talked. And
Yeah.
been like, oh boy,
Yeah.
like rubbing their stomach.
There is a scene where a shark sees a soldier fall in the water, and I swear his
Yeah.
eyeballs came out of his skull at like a ooga right before he ate him. So let's start.
They all have napkins tied around their necks.
Little forks strapped to their fins. The sharks may be the most developed characters in the film. Let's. I want to start with I think Tommy. I love your initiative to separate these Gladiator from Gladiator. I don't think we can. We have to take it as the sequel that it's intended to be. That Ridley Scott put a lot of weight behind making this movie and to tell this story of legacy and identity, as I said, and of power and corruption and revenge and there's a dash of freedom and slavery in there. And of course the highlights of spectacle, like of Roman spectacle, and the attitudes that led to the fall of Rome. And if we separate all the story stuff, how well do you think the movie landed its thematic heart, if at all?
But which thematic heart are you referring to? Because I guess that's the thing. Like, if it really is a history tale about the fall of the Roman Empire, my question is this just the meme that everybody's been talking about how we all think about the Roman Empire all the time? Because so much of this is unreality. I love the things you're saying here, Pete, about the attempts they made at showing us things that we've heard in terms of history. But for the sake, it appears that for the sake of the story, they decided to change that as well. And so where do your question was, does it find its thematic heart? I don't think so. I think it could be looked at, some people could say, as a bastardization of the very thing they're trying to explain to us. And that I have a real problem with.
So because I'm going to connect it to the first one. And to me, I think the thread that they're trying to follow through in is in the beginning where Marcus Aurelius says, what is my legacy going to be? Is it, being the philosopher, a warrior, a tyrant? Can it be that I give Rome back to the people? And I feel like that's the piece that we're still, there's all the political, scheming going. And I thought this is the thread we're picking up on. And I thought by the end, then we should have resolution to that of which way things go, whether or not it's historically accurate. It's a movie. So what is it that's going to give us that? Yes, we've got that, or, oh no, this is a tragedy. And I felt indifferent at the end. It just didn't, the question I asked was, do the Roman people even care? Because all this is going on. I don't know that they're invested one way or another, because if I am a viewer of all the things as a citizen of Rome, of all these things going on and all these leaders and scheming, and at the end this happens, how would I feel? And I don't feel anything. Like, whatever. Doesn't really matter. Nobody cares about me. I got a bunch of selfish people, stabbing each other in the back, and my daily life isn't going to change, so it doesn't matter.
I like the idea of the idea. I like movies about scheming, and there's a certain type of morbid curiosity of seeing overly developed nations fall under the crippling of their own decadence. When you don't have anything left to do, you just start turning on yourselves. I mean, that's what happened to Egypt also, where they just started burying worlds of treasures with people just because they didn't know what else to do. So when you become so stagnant, I think that's really interesting. I thought it was weird that it was so played for laughs a lot of times in this, but I also kind of liked that. Again, I was the one that kind of enjoyed this movie. So, but I mean, I'm divorced. I'm saying like it was a good time at the flicks. In no way was this a history lesson. In no way did it have the gravitas it thought it did. Mr. Mescal is no crow, all of those things. It doesn't work, but it's a interesting ride if I'm going to go on it. And I loved parts of, I wanted to see a serious movie, I guess. Less Gladiator, more just look at the different, Marie Antoinette it, really get into the grossness of the rich people and the horribleness of the not rich people and arise up about that. I don't need sharks and I don't need baboons for that. So
no, there's a very interesting chessboard that we're set up with when you look at Paul Mescal's character and Pedro Pascal and then Denzel Washington. And you've got that dynamic, that triangulation of who's allying with who and what they're trying to do and how they're playing each other. That was very interesting. And I wanted a lot more of that. And it does play out, but there were so many other things, distracting from that. A boat. Yes. There's potential. I think that's probably why I'm frustrated, because I saw the hints of what I really felt like could have been that traditional epic political, very
like
interesting.
More like conclave, like a serious take about this kind of thing. Would be fascinating.
Yeah. It's all of that you're describing. I totally agree. And every time they went into the underground to have their secret meetings with the Senate and do all of the stuff that I really wanted them to evolve into a real kind of thriller, they gave us like one senator avatar to care about. And I guess the doofus that lost his house in betting with Denzel Washington. One should never bet with Denzel Washington. We've learned that countless times.
Do they really have? She pushed his stone and the door slid open like a clue bookcase. Did we really have that back then?
JJ, did you see that?
No.
That's how they get to the downstairs secret room. She pushes a stone and it goes,
yes.
And I was like, I don't think so.
Yeah. And then stone moved silently like it was a pneumatic, like yeah, I didn't care for that.
Can I say just to get it out of my head, my biggest quibble, but also the thing that I enjoyed the most is there's one word that is missing throughout this movie, and it would have been said by thousands of people. And the word is what? Because there's so much just like talking in these huge Colosseums. Paul Mescal is addressing billions of soldiers, and we needed like you said, kind of a thing.
Well,
like 3 people could hear it, and everyone else is just like, wait, what?
Well, let's not forget the water that Matt Lucas is carrying, right? Like he's the MC. He's not amplified. He's just drinking his wine.
I because I just watched the first movie this morning, I'd like to sort of remind us that they didn't do that in the first movie either. They had the MC addressing the entire Colosseum with no particular amplification, but for some reason, you didn't say what. You let it happen. There was something that made it more grand in the first movie, where this one just felt like a whole needn't have bothered the entire way through. There are so many needless cutaways and so many needless things that are not story points. They are maybe just sharks. They are, I mean, it's really difficult to see the why at any turn in this movie, including the beginning.
I'm glad that you brought up the cutaways. This movie was also edited really weird. It's like he didn't know how to end scenes. And so it would go to just like some person staring off into the middle distance or cut to two dogs. And I guess that's the end of like too much coverage or not enough coverage. He didn't, it's like it wasn't crafted, which makes me think that some of this movie was remade in editing because it made so many weird choices of like, oh, you went to that because what you had originally just didn't work.
Right. The two dogs is exactly one of the ones that I'm thinking, why, what there's no reason for this.
Which I think is sad, because the setup of Pedro Pascal's regretful general character, I quite like. I really like the idea of that mistaken identity, right? That Pascal's character as Acacius.
I love it. All of those.
He doesn't like it, when he learns the identity of Mescal's character, like that enlightenment should come with some significant weight to it. And I think that the way they wove the story together was kind of nonsense and didn't give Pedro Pascal a chance to really shine and be a hero character. His ultimate ending was rushed and sad, but not in an emotionally resonant way. It was sad that made me feel bad for Pedro Pascal for having to sit there and do it.
Right. And one of the two real movie stars that are capturing attention is now gone.
Yes.
And the other one is doing a bad job, but is incredibly watchable. Mr. Washington, in my opinion.
Okay.
I thought he was terrible in this movie, but he's so fun to watch because he's a movie star. He's so interesting. I'm glad you brought up the beginning and the setup because
it's all JJ knows, so we got to keep it tight.
As I'm remembering now, I was like, oh man, like Ridley Scott, he's back. He's done it. There was a lot of real beauty and patience. That opening battle was epic and looked great and everything. And then, it sounds like I'm joking, but I'm not. And then the baboons came out, and I was like, oh no, he's not. He's still Ridley Scott. He's on this trajectory still, because that looked terrible and it was too weird and it didn't look right and none of it made sense.
So you did like the first battle. The difficulty that I had too is that, okay, so I want to say that I'm with Pete on the idea of this regretful general piece, but it was disorienting right away in that who's our protagonist? We are set up with Hanum as the protagonist, but then Pedro Pascal comes in. I mean, yes, epic, but what do we do as an audience member? What are you rooting for in that epic battle? I mean, I guess just more cool visuals, because you can't pick a side. You have this was one of the things that was a difficulty of the first movie that was navigated perfectly, right? You have the Romans, traditionally the conquering emperor, but it was navigated perfectly with Russell Crowe. This movie didn't even take steps to help us figure out where to go, I felt.
That's a good point. Until I felt recentered when he was so sad about, I take this for Rome and woe be to the conquered. Then I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, we're supposed to like him too. But you're right. That didn't occur to me at first of like, wait, but I really like him and I like him better than our hero. But he's doing all these terrible things.
I mean, on that point, we probably should turn our attention to Mr. Washington.
Sure.
I saw the trailer, and I think all of us said at one point or another, that Denzel Washington doesn't know what movie he's in, what he said yes to, or Ridley Scott doesn't know who he just cast to do this. And I went into the movie hoping beyond hope that I would be proven wrong, and I was not. He was. You're right, Tom. You're absolutely right. He is bigger than life. He is bigger than life in this movie, and he is just vibrant and I not once did I believe who he was in this movie.
No, and you just
No.
he's one of those actors now, unfortunately, with all due credit and bowing down and all of that, but I mean, you could just see through him. He's now Robert De Niro, he's now Al Pacino. It's just
Yeah.
ticks. It's ticks,
Yeah.
and you can tell exactly when he starts improvising with movements and lines, and they cut to a wide because the director knows Denzel is just going to walk around and touch things, and that's what he does. And he's just been doing it for like a while now. And there's nowhere to hide in this movie because there's no one else that's soaking up the attention.
And it just makes you want to say, that's politics.
Yes.
Over and over again.
I own your house. I want your dinner. I don't remember what the other part was.
I want your
Yes.
loyalty.
Oh, you don't have that line, JJ. Yeah.
Right.
He does a version of I'll drink your milkshake.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, because I didn't see the rest of the movie, my assumption is just that Michael Che finished the movie for him with his caricature because he was playing a caricature of himself throughout this film.
So the trouble I have with his arc, and I think you bring up a really interesting point, JJ, in the conversation about casting and what faces they put, what bankable faces they put where. I'm curious your take on the just the sort of caste politics and caste economy that they're asking us to play with this movie, because in the case of Denzel Washington, he is in the beginning he's set up as a good guy, as an ally to Lucius, and over the course of the movie I'm not sure I understand when he became a bad guy. But in the end, the final fight is with Denzel Washington and Lucius. I didn't see that coming at all.
Well, and I will say, again, with my sort of recency of the original Gladiator, Denzel here, we've put our biggest star in the Proximo character from the first movie. And Proximo's arc in the first movie was the opposite of this. So it's like, I feel, I don't know, but my assumption here is that this is how Ridley Scott justified coming to this, is saying, okay, we have our cast of characters from the first film, and now let's take two other characters, technically Proximo, the slave master from the first Gladiator, and Quintus, the reluctant general from the first Gladiator. Let's put our biggest stars in these two characters and let's humanize them and maybe put them on different arcs. At least that's where I was. In terms of casting, though, I mean, your question was about casting. I got really tripped up through this movie a lot because I could not figure out if we were watching like the Hamiltonized version of Roman history here, because it really felt like that a lot, in that, like, do I pay attention to who these characters are in actuality, or is this just a fictionalized thing here for the purpose of witnessing the epic battles? I was taken out of it at every turn because of that. The first battle included.
I feel like that is that's just part and parcel for this film, is the fact that I knew right from the beginning, from when they introduced Pedro Pascal and his wife, my first thought was, well, she's going to die and that will give him motivation.
Oh, you
And
mean
I was-
Paul Mescal?
Oh,
You
Paul
said
Mescal.
Pedro Pascal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul Mescal, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul Mescal. Their first hugs and kisses, and they're
Right.
strapping on each other's satchels. I was like,
Nope, they're done.
She's done, and he's motivated. And I'm so sad to say that that's exactly what the movie is about, is him being motivated because of death, which seems like such a Ridley Scott trump card at this point. And
why did Pedro Pascal in the battle single out her? Because she killed one person next to him?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
wait,
I
no,
know.
that
Yeah.
one. It's
just get that one.
Right.
utter ridiculous.
Well, because in the first Gladiator, that worked so well for Maximus of taking his wife and child from him. So it's like, okay, let's do something similar. We have to motivate this character. We'll take his wife away from him. That gives him this inner drive. We need to quickly, hot bake this, get him going, get him motivated within the first 10 minutes of the movie, because we've got a lot of story to tell. So they did that, but it just does not have that emotional resonance because it was done as a plot point versus that was an integral piece of the whole dynamic to things in terms of even Maximus's relationship with Lucilla. And she has a son the same age as his son, which gets into, I won't even get into after watching the first one and this one, I'm like, you can retcon this all you want. I will not buy into the fact that he is Lucius, or that Lucius is Maximus's son. It doesn't resonate. It breaks too many things with the first one. But again, they needed that quick motivation, and it felt like, I thought, please don't do this thing where you're going to redo the movie, you're going to alter a couple things, but most of the story points are going to be the same. And the trailer was like, oh, we're going to have sea battles in the Colosseum. I thought, okay, that's leveling up that, like we do, is bigger Death Star, right? But there's going to be something more to this. And when we had a interesting, more complex story with 3 people versus just like Russell Crowe and, Joaquin Phoenix, duking it out, I was like, oh, we've got different sides and who's backstabbing who. I had high hopes, but the beginning, as soon as she died so quickly, I thought, I didn't get a chance to know her or their relationship or anything. And then his first gladiator fight, where he starts commanding them, like, okay, hold fast, and all of that. Well, in the first one, Russell Crowe could do that because some of those guys, he was like, oh, sir, I served with you, so-and-so.
He was a commander.
He was a commander. Paul Mescal, okay, I got a sense he was some type of commander, but that was sort of observed, and then he's just commanding guys to do something. For what reason, I don't know. I don't get the sense that he commands their respect or loyalty or I haven't seen him demonstrate strategic, creativity or intelligence. As I say, yeah, listen to this guy. He's going to do something dynamic here that's not going to be expected. So I just felt like he is this poor shadow of Maximus. And I felt like Paul Mescal was good casting for the character that should have been, which would have been in that more political thriller of, he's a pawn. He isn't the hero that's going to, he's not Braveheart calling the troops. He's a pawn that's being manipulated. And how he cleverly works that would be the genius of that type of character. And I think Paul Mescal could do that. But unfortunately, that's not the film we get. So I have to take what I can, which is lots of shirtless, sword, play, which is fine. But I've seen that done, and I've seen it done better before, and not making me feel sad for rhinos.
I want to see your movie, Steve. I like your
movie. We all do.
Connie Nielsen is back as Mom, Lucilla. Did anyone get stuck on the reality of recognition after all these years when she's in the cell with him? Like, there is a play around which they sort of deal with when he recognize her? Does she recognize him? Who are they? Who they say they are? Right? There is that bit. I found myself really digging in my intellectual teeth on, would Paul Mescal, would his character have recognized his mother after all those years without an iPhone?
I would think so, because she looks exactly the same.
She looks pretty close.
She is not aged, so yeah, I would think, yeah. I think he sees her in the stadium,
and he wasn't.
But he's so angry at her. Okay. He's not.
Right, and but he wasn't. I had to think through that. Like, how old was he? No, he was like.
He was like 12.
8, 9, 10, whatever. So it's not like, oh, he was 4 or 5.
Right.
So, memory. And it's 16 years, but at 10 years old, 12 years old, 16 years, you spent those formative years with your mother, your father's dead. There's all these things. You know who your mother is. And so I really found that hard to believe. Even if he tried to disassociate himself from that, it was a big struggle for me. And so in my head canon, I played this as, he's that changeling character. She wants him to be Lucius. She needs him to be Lucius for this scheme. But again, that's a different movie, but I felt like that would make more sense than him trying to play like, I'm denying that. And so I'm going to pretend that I don't know who you are and that I'm not owning this title. Because I don't get the sense that he, as what did they call him? The Prince of Rome, which makes no sense to me. I didn't get any sense of why he would have such a strong disassociation from that. They sent him out for his own safety, so he has to make it on his own. But I don't have any sense of the trauma that might have been, where he would want to have such a strong disassociation of like, no, I'm not going to recognize you as your mother because these other people raised me, and I am the man who I am because of them, and has nothing to do with you or Rome. And so I really struggled with that lack of recognition, that whatever gamesmanship he's trying to play, and denying that identity. I did not see a reason for that I could believe in.
I'm glad I'm not alone. I didn't get a reason either. That didn't make sense to me. Like, even if they expect us to believe that both of the characters in that cell knew who each other was, the emotional reason behind why he wanted to dissociate is lost on me. The dual emperors,
Twin Joffreys.
twin Joffreys, right? This is it's also what was in the second Matrix movie where they're the
twins with
the twins,
Dreadlock.
the albino twins, or
Milli
whatever.
Vanilli.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I mean, I kind of feel like it's Reloaded, right? It's table stakes to have immature emperors demanding insanity in a Roman story, and I struggled to feel a whole lot. Did you guys appreciate Emperor Geta and Emperor Caracalla?
They were pretty blandly psychotic.
Yeah.
Like they were just sort of petulant. There's just more nuanced or interesting ways to go with it. Instead, he just kind of, like what Steve was talking about, everything in this movie is just hit the gas, get us there as quickly as possible. They might as well have just cut to him and then they just punch a cat in the face. Right. Okay, I'm not supposed to like him. No, they're just so weird. And the guy who I guess is crazy because he has syphilis is what we find out. The twin who lives longer. He was extremely uninteresting, and that's kind of an interesting actor. They just didn't have enough to do. There wasn't a lot of fun there. And that should be really fun, gross Joaquin Phoenix like.
Which again, he did so well in the first movie. I mean, I totally understand, Tommy, your original point of wanting to separate these two, but it seems like they tried to approach a lot of the same problems in this movie and just did it much poorly than they did the first time.
I think I made the right choice. To not rewatch it. Sounds like that was the winning move.
Well, I struggle to understand, if I'm looking at the story of like, what is it that everybody wants? So if we've got Pedro Pascal, who is like, I'm done with warfare. I'm done with this. I've got my army. I'm going to bring them in. We're doing this. I don't know what these two lunatics want, because they just played it as like, we're just crazy. We just like violence. We're just going to do things in reaction to, versus they've got to have some motivation, because it's only been 16 years. How did they come to power if Lucilla is the daughter of Marcus Aurelius? Why is she not in power? What's going on with the Senate? Where did they come from? How did they even get into power?
Right.
Did they just step in and take it in that void? I needed something to know how they got there, so I understood at least where they came from, to know where they were going, because they were just caricatures they were just punching bags and punchlines, for things, because I am going to decree so and so that this person, and it's the monkey. Like, oh great, the monkey's in charge. Haha, they're so wacky.
He ends up, he makes his first council the monkey.
The monkey, and I thought
he's so crazy,
right? And it just. They can't be the villains then, which then sets it up for Denzel to be the big bad at the end. But they weren't even like interesting agents of chaos, because they didn't do anything.
Yeah, they were like Road Warrior, Mad Max villains. They're just villains because they're gross and loud and just dumb. There's no fun to that.
Yeah,
agreed.
Right, and it also makes them predictable. Like you say, they weren't good agents of chaos.
Yeah, that's a great
point. Of course they're going to make the first council the monkey. Like,
right,
they should have asked, who do you think I'm going to make the first council? And every senator would have said, you're going to make it the monkey. Of course, we all know it's going to be the monkey. Let's just get on with it. So I it's big. The movie is big. The look of it is big. John Matheson is back on Gladiator on Gladiator II. What did you guys think about the camera and the look of the film? Separate all the other things we didn't like about the movie. How'd it look? They built a lot of Rome in Malta to make it look good. Did it look good?
I mean, with the limited that I saw of the film, I really feel like the purpose was to be something big and bright and beautiful. So I get what they're doing there. I don't have any real sense of, in terms of the landscape or the environment, what was CGI versus what was practical, which I guess is a compliment that we'd like to say there. It has a lot of the feel of the largesse of like Titanic when we talk about stuff like that, where they just made a whole lot of big sets that they could fill out with computer graphics and make look work. And to that end, I believe they accomplished that.
I thought a lot of the outside stuff looked good. I thought for some reason a lot of the indoor stuff, something wasn't handled correctly. It looked like a set. Like I got the feeling that they're walking into a soundstage now, even though there's nothing. I don't know what was missing. I'm not smart enough of a visualist to know this is why I feel this way. But I was like, that's not a real wall. That's not thing.
Is it because
I
of those
think
styrofoam rock that she pushed? Is that it?
maybe,
Right.
yeah. Some
My
of
God.
the indoor stuff just seemed very. Maybe it was the fact that there was never any windows. That you
Yeah,
can't
there
see
was no
the
atmosphere.
outside, and so there's no atmosphere, and you need more of that in order to make it seem, because all of these places had windows all over the place, because what else were they doing?
Yeah. There was no sense of location of where things were relative to other
Right.
things. So when we have that first, Paul Mescal has that first fight, and he's like, they're like, the emperors are like, no, it's to the death, and all of that. And it's like, okay, and he kills the guy, all that. Then it's like, oh, we're going to Rome. I'm like, I
Where?
thought they were in Rome because the
Yeah.
emperors were there, but then so whose house were they at, and why was this there? Or when Denzel shows up to, what's his name, Thrax or whatever, it's like, oh, I own your house. I'm like, okay, that's his house, but where is that? We're basically in the foyer, but I have no sense of that. And then the secret passage, how to get to that. I think we've got one shot of like Lucilla sneaking down some, evening alleyway, but how far is she going and how big is her palace? Or even within that, we see a couple things, cut to the dogs. They're walking through a doorway, but everything was so isolated from itself. I didn't know where things went to or from. We just had, yeah, as you said, like sets. We're here, and it's a room that's isolated from the rest of the world around it, because we're going to do this little scene right here, and then we'll move to another scene someplace else. It doesn't matter where.
She goes down that there's the gate at the top of that thing, and there are like little stairs in the middle of the ramp, and that gate opens. She goes down there to get to the underground and the secret chamber. Paul Mescal goes down to get his dad's army stuff, his gladiatorial gear. I think and he runs up it to get out into the Colosseum. I think they really wanted us to believe that those ramps are everywhere all over Rome, and maybe they were, but I couldn't stop thinking that this is just, they had the one and they just are
Repurposed,
using
yeah.
it all over
It's
the
like
place.
Disneyland. There's just tunnels
Yes.
under everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
There was a
But
lot
they
of
all have
basements.
one entrance. So many basements. I would love to know, and I'm sure that somebody listening is an expert archaeologist in Rome. Awesome. And I'm sure that you could tell me that what they did to make this movie hews closely to history. Like, there are those ramps and gates and secret passages with buttons and all of those things. No, we have those were real. Okay. What doesn't matter is any of the history if I don't believe this movie. And I
Right.
didn't believe this movie
No.
at all. I didn't believe this movie.
Right.
At one point at the end, when he says, "Speak to me, Father," he picks up a handful of there's so much picking up of dirt. And I was looking for like a bottle cap in there. It just didn't even look
Yeah.
like real dirt. It just looked like thimbles and thread and maybe a Hot Wheels car and some beads. That's what it felt like to me. I didn't believe any of it. That's the real challenge. And to all the credit of the people who built over an 8-kilometer area in Malta, they built Rome to, parts of Rome to make it look legit. It like all of that is on film. It's in there.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
to ILM, who put water in the Colosseum, that's
Yeah.
amazing. And the movie I don't think the movie exceeded that. They got a lot of money from Malta and Morocco to film where they did, but yeah, just not sure it holds up as a story.
Well, I have a weird sort of film board-ish question to pull out and consider this, because the last film board that I was on, we had done The Crow, the new version of The Crow. And one of our big difficulties with that as a group, now I loved that one, but one of our big difficulties of that was it was such a divorce from the original Crow. It was so different. And that's something that I appreciated, but a lot of people who were loving The Crow did not. So I just kind of want to pose the philosophical question here, because obviously we would like something new in what we see in Gladiator II, but running on these tire treads, especially when Gladiator, compared to The Crow, is such a larger movie in cinematic history, it seems like Ridley Scott had to do some of this, right? He had to make some connective tissue that worked here to, I wouldn't call it fan service, but really to make a movie that would be a true sequel, because The Crow wasn't, right? So is there a way that we can appreciate this as the next chapter without all of our quibbles? For me, my answer is no, but I wanted to pose that to you guys because specifically, I loved The New Crow. And when I'm thinking about doing my rating for this movie, I am comparing them exactly in my mind, right? Like how much I appreciated this and how much I appreciated that. So I really want to hear from you guys, like in terms of where this shows up as a sequel. Is there some sort of appreciation we can get for Ridley Scott and what he's trying to do here in that?
You mean as an excuse?
As maybe the reason why. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we could say it's an excuse, but maybe that's why it's the kind of thing of like, he's got to play the hits, right?
Yes. And I liked the hits. Again, I was the one that kind of enjoyed this movie.
Right.
It's the quieter moments that were so missed. And that's hard to find an excuse for that. It's hard to cast someone like Denzel Washington and not be able to rein him in. To tank that entire thing, to make so many confusing, to decide throughout different big bads, and almost none of them are interesting enough. And then you just keep changing. Unfortunately, that doesn't go alongside of not fan service, but like having to do that stuff, because the stuff that he did, like some of the battles were really thrilling.
Yeah, for
Some
sure.
of the stuff was really exciting. And so that stuff he did, and I was fine with. It's the other stuff. It's like he did the hard part. Wait, how does the sentence end?
He went easy on the hard part. And
yes, something like that. Yeah, he made the hard part good, and he messed up the easy part. What? All right. All my
you're absolutely right. Those battles and everything when they're with the water and all of that, and the strategy of like pull the oars in so we can snap the ones off the other. I mean, there were really, it was something where it's like, oh, I haven't seen that, because we don't see ship to ship combat in close confines. So it's different. It's, it's Pirates of the Caribbean, and they're shooting cannons across vast distances. So yeah, there was something interesting. Even that baboon fight of the, just something interesting with Hanno or Lucius, whatever we'll call him, of like, I've got to defend myself. And so this baboon is coming at me, and I'm going to take a chunk of flesh out of him, because that's what he's going to do to me. I'm going to fight him as an animal to animal, because that's what it's going to take. And I'm like, ooh, that's going to tell, I started thinking that tells me something about what type of fighter he is. Forget that. No, it's just about something that was unexpected. And I thought that dynamic of that fight was very interesting, of like, here's two competitors, sort of sizing each other up in a different way, because one is human, one is an animal. And what's he thinking? There were those things that I really enjoyed. And I will say to Tommy, I had that fun. Yes, it's a fun flick in those areas, but those are just like, little sprinkles on such a larger thing. And I think they were handled well when it comes to, again, geography. I knew where I was. I wasn't disoriented. I didn't have that, quick editing that kept me like, what's going on? Who's fighting what? I could track things fairly well in the large battles as well. Ridley Scott does that well. I know where we are and what's going on when there's armies about. And yeah, to see, storming the walls and getting those, bridges over and all of that, and arrows flying. I was like, yes, he's in his element there, doing that well.
I'm going to agree with everything you just said, because this is a set piece movie, and the set pieces were really fun. I struggled with the CG elements, but only because I'm looking closely at them. Like, if this movie just washes over me, all of that stuff is really fun. And I just went in with much higher expectations for the story. That's the big crime of the movie.
Yeah, my favorite comment that I'm going to take away from this episode is even that baboon fight.
As
I'm
baboon
a
fights
fan of the
go,
baboon fight. Yeah.
yeah.
I like the baboon fight because again, it goes back to what I know about the Romans, where they were nuts for fights, right? Like, the thing that this movie didn't pay off at all was Chekhov's Bengal tiger.
Right.
Oh
That
yeah,
we got a
yeah,
quick cut, and I was like,
yeah,
that puppy's coming out to play, and we
yeah.
never we never got it. And I think that was a big loss. It turns out, apparently, Scott wanted to do the rhino battle in the original film and didn't have the budget for it, so they cut it. So this was like, that's why we get so many animals, because it feels like it's stacked with baboons and then rhino.
Right.
Maybe that's why the kitty didn't get to come out to play.
That's the reason this movie was
Mm.
made. One
Yeah.
other real key thing that was a major difference for me is as I was walking to Gladiator II, I found myself humming, the theme from Backdraft and the thing from The Power of One, only because I had just been watching Hans Zimmer in Gladiator I. And the reality is the music in Gladiator II is not memorable, special in any way in comparison to what's
No.
there in Gladiator 1. So that, it's a different composer, but it just
Yeah.
wasn't even a part of the film here for me.
Harry Gregson Williams is a really great composer, and we've actually had him on movies we like. He's a
That's
past guest,
excellent.
and he's wonderful. And also, I agree with you. Like, there are this was like good music that didn't feel a piece with the film, and I struggle with that as a final piece. But he also did, the Meg 2, The Trench, which was
Fun.
hey, sometimes you got to take a paycheck.
Yeah.
So overall, the movie is what it is. Do we have closing comments? Anything we haven't talked about that you really want to make sure is recorded by you for legacy?
To answer the film's question, and especially the question of the first film, it sounds like we are not entertained. The end. I bet I'm the 9,000th person to make that.
The other joke that we haven't said at all, but I'll just say it out loud, is maybe we should have seen Wicked, because they're very much trying to do Wickiator or
Glicken.
Yeah, what was the other one? Glicken.
It's Glicken.
Yeah.
Is the Barbenheimer.
The Barbenheimer is Glicken. And so I'm excited that exists. I don't know that they're going to be able to get much traction on it.
No, I will say that the theater talked about Friday night being packed for both movies, and they said, "Oh, well, what's more?" And they said, "Definitely Wicked is drawing most of the folks, significantly different." But they said it was a lot more traffic than they had expected on Friday night.
That's the movie. That's where we are, and now we need to turn our attention to how we're going to rank it. Letterboxd, we're on Letterboxd, letterboxd.com/thenextreel. That's where you can find our HQ page and links to all of our ratings and reviews. What are you going to do? JJ, how do you even approach this? You only saw an hour of the movie.
Yeah, and I was, honestly, I will give you a number, but I don't feel like it's fair considering where I am on it. I thought walking out after an hour that the 2 stars that I'm going to give it were probably more than I would give it if I stayed longer. It felt that way as I was watching the movie, because so many of those needless cutaways were angering me as an audience member. So, but then after talking to you guys, I feel better about the fact that that's where I was. So I would probably even push lower. But for the purposes of what we're doing today, I'll give it 2 and a not like.
Okay. All right. Steve?
I've been on the fence about this. And then, JJ did talk about the end, and I realized that the end is such a strong call back to the first one. So the movie makes the fatal error of continually reminding me of a better movie. So I'm going to go with 2.5 stars on this. I thought those cool battles were going to keep it over in the 3 range, but I have to go with 2.5. And there's no heart for me on this. It just makes me too angry.
Makes me angry. Okay, Tom, are you angry at all?
I'm not angry. I guess just for the purpose of my sanity, I am glad I didn't go back. One of the big reasons I didn't go watch the first Gladiator is I knew that I would be influenced by nostalgia, because that movie meant a lot to me a long time ago. And so I would be looking past its flaws. I'd be, looking at some of the struggles we had with CGI back then for some of the cityscapes. So if you're allowed to do what I did and just divorce it from it while acknowledging Mr. Mescal is no Mr. Crow, all of that stuff, I'll give it a 3. And it might be between 3 and 3.5. A heart, I don't feel there's enough heart in it. So no, I'm not going to give it a heart, but I'll give it a 3 or a 3.5.
That's the exact problem that I have with it. It's actually not on the stars; it's on the heart. And is it 3 stars, no heart, 2 stars and a heart? I don't know. I think I'm actually leaning on 2 stars, no heart, because the spectacle is significant in the movie, and it's just such empty calories. And I don't. I want to expect more from movies of Mr. Scott. And this was less than, and it makes me sad. And of course, the usual disclaimers apply. Making movies is really hard, and it is a collaborative effort of 1,200 people that come together to make this movie and take years to do it. And we just talk about it in an hour and make these judgments. But boy, that's what movies are for. And I think the disappointment for me is I wanted to feel more walking into this movie because, like you said, Tom, of the first one. This movie, I think, fails because it carries on its back such legacy. And that's the problem.
Movies are so hard to make. I'm going to go ahead and change everyone's scores to 5.
Okay.
Great job, Gladiator II. You got a perfect score.
You really did just change those, and we're never going to remember what we said. So
I 100% did.
No.
Yeah,
I
really did that.
Pete, you were supposed to be recording this.
I don't even know.
Come on, man.
I've been transcribing it. AI is gonna re-record your voices. Don't worry about it. It'll be all AI ADR. Thank you all for downloading and listening to this show. We sure appreciate your time and attention. Next month, we do have a movie picked, and because he's the oldest of us, it's going to go to Steve to tell us what it is.
It is going to be a movie that I can't even say it's from our youth, but it is from way back in the day, Y2K.
Don't know what we're getting into with that. I have some hunches. But we lived through it, and we're going to talk all about it, and we're really excited to talk about Y2K. I can't even tell you that I've seen the trailer.
I haven't.
For this movie. We just picked it.
Oh,
yeah,
I have. I've seen it.
I have. Oh, it's a ride.
I'm going to go watch it right now.
Yeah, good, awesome. So that's what we're going to be talking about next month. Thank you all for downloading. We appreciate you. You're the best, and we'll see you next month when meeting adjourned. I'm sick. I'm done. Meeting adjourned. We're all done.